How dare they? How dare they add on to what they've already created? It's almost like we're not considered part of the city. We're not considered worthy of consideration as far as pollution goes. We're not considered, oh, if they get sick, oh, so what? Does anyone care about us?
Just 5 miles away from our nation's capital is a community called Brentwood. Despite being so close to the capital, a place that is supposed to represent the core and very equal values of our nation, Brentwood residents are currently victims of an unjust, systemic problem: environmental racism.
Well, my family's been here for over 60 years. And when my dad wanted to buy a house here in Brentwood, he was barred. It was called redlining at that time, and they did not allow, as they called it, Negroes to live in this community. And he had to really fight to buy a house, and then other Negroes started moving in right after that. But it's been about over 60 years.
As the result of the historical redlining in communities of color, Brentwood has been disproportionately exposed to environmental hazards through the discriminatory practices in urban planning and the development of the city. For decades, when DC needed a place to put industrial facilities or factories, Brentwood has been the place they go to dump this pollution with no regard for the well-being of the Brentwood residents. In fact, according to Darlene, there's a street in Brentwood with almost a mile of industrial polluters, including a trash transfer station, a paving company, an Amtrak maintenance facility, and a number of car repair shops. To make matters worse, Brentwood, an already disadvantaged community from the effects of redlining, is now the victim of another plot. The district, despite the wishes of the residents, now wants to add a 250 bus depot to this already heavily polluted city because these neighborhoods are seen as expendable. This brings up a number of problems for the residents, mostly pollution-related health concerns like asthma, which is ultimately a lingering effect of redlining.
We're standing by the side of the potential bus depot, the future school bus depot. One thing to note about this street is we're standing on around the 1600 block of W Street Northeast. There's like multiple industrial sites like sort of on top of each other. So like the bus depot, Capital Paving, DDOT, right? And just keeps going. And so a lot of people who have lived here for decades, we're talking 40, 50 years, a lot of them are passing away, and, it's from like a lot of different types of cancers. So multiple myeloma, certain brain cancers, heart and like respiratory problems, right? And so, in some ways it's hard to find people to talk to because they've passed away, and a lot of people sort of think that it has to do with all the toxins from this area. One thing to note as an example is that in the construction of this bus depot, there was tanks stored in the ground, for example, right? And so they were for gasoline, and so these things get in the soil that affects people, and so there's a lot of that kind of stuff here, and it negatively impacts the people who've lived here, particularly those who've lived here for a long time.
So I think, in my opinion, from what I see, I feel like there is a lot of pollution in the area between the cement factory that's currently there. We always see like the smoke in the mornings, and then with the garbage transfer company, I suspect between like the smell and I have a dog, so I feel like my dog's like always getting sick, that there's something going on the ground as well.
I do have a lot of concern for the residents that have lived here their whole lives. I think the compounded effect of decades of being here hasn't been good. I do have neighbors that have struggled with asthma and breathing difficulties, so I think there is a longer impact for people who have lived here a long time.
I mean, it's terrible. I mean, the smell is terrible. You know, a lot of my neighbors who've lived here much longer than I have talk about, you know, not being able to open their windows. They don't want their kids to play outside. You know, it's just, I mean, and like, there's like, if you go over there, there's like a cloud of like what looks like dust and dirt, and it's just terrible, you know. And like, I don't know what's all in there, but it can't possibly be healthy. And like for me personally, like I have asthma, and I'm pretty sure that it's made my asthma worse. And so yeah, it's really unsightly to live, I think, by the trash transfer company.
The pollution has been so bad that some residents have been forced to take matters into their own hands by buying expensive air monitors just to track particulate matter 2.5 in order to ensure that all this pollution and traffic by their homes isn't compromising their health.
So in Brentwood, we're currently doing what I guess people would call community science to study the pollution in our neighborhood. And so I want to show you, these are called purple air monitors. What they do is measure particulate matter. So there's two kinds of particulate matter, 2.5 and 10. So PM 2.5, PM 10. And PM 2.5 is really, it's sort of important because it's like that sort of fine grain pollution that can really get in people's lungs. It's often sort of emitted by vehicles, and most people have had these for a couple of months now, and we're looking to analyze that data and see, you know, how the different, whether, you know, like the climate, the vehicle traffic is impacting the levels of PM 2.5 in our neighborhood. So again, a part of our community science initiative in Brentwood is, in addition to those purple air monitors, we have two black carbon monitors. They're called F-lomers, I think. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. But essentially what they do is they take a measure of the air from here, like through this tube into this bucket here, and measure the amount of black carbon, but also the amount of particulate matter 2.5 in the air. And so the thing you should know about black carbon is sort of like a sooty black material that's emitted from like diesel and gas and coal fired like plants, things like that. And it can and other like fossil fuel burning like emitters, right? And the reason this resident has both the PM and the black carbon is because this house is located pretty close. I would say it's probably 100 feet right next to where the city parks its trash trucks, and right at the end of this street is where the trash transfer company is, and then across from that is the Fort Meyer sort of construction facility, right? So it's a really good spot for trying to determine the levels of pollution in the city. And also you can sort of smell the trash transfer company from over here. So some of that noxious odor that many of the residents complain about and have said, like, it smells so bad, you get a real sense of it in this location.
Despite the district's insistence that this new bus depot will barely affect the air quality, the residents already feel the impacts of pollution from the numerous industrial facilities in the area. To make matters worse, the bus depot will bring over 200 buses and 400 new employees to this small community. To get a better sense of Brentwood's current air quality, I decided to use the EPA's EJ screen, an environmental justice mapping tool that would allow me to calculate and compare Brentwood's air quality and traffic levels with nearby DC neighborhoods. The statistics from the EPA's EJ screen prove that there is significant evidence to back up the claims and concerns of the Brentwood residents, as Brentwood ranks alarmingly high in environmental justice indexes like particulate matter 2.5. Compared to communities in the United States, Brentwood ranked in the 87th percentile in particulate matter 2.5 levels in the air, while also placing 91st in ozone levels and 98th in diesel particulate matter. Additionally, Brentwood ranked in the 99th percentile in air toxics cancer risk, 98th in traffic proximity, and 98th in lead-contaminated dust. Brentwood was also in the 97th percentile in RMP facility proximity, 99th in hazardous waste proximity, 97th in the number of adults with asthma, and lastly, 96th in demographic index, which the EPA describes as the combination of percent low income and percent minority, showing that Brentwood is far more susceptible and vulnerable to environmental hazards compared to other DC neighborhoods like Wesley Heights in the Northwest. Wesley Heights, on the other hand, ranked under 50 percentile in all environmental justice indexes except diesel particulate matter and hazardous waste facility. Notable differences also include adults with asthma, where Wesley Heights ranked in the 38th percentile, and demographic index, where they ranked in the 29th percentile. This data provides evidence that Brentwood is another clear example of environmental injustice, and suggests that Brentwood residents are highly exposed to environmental and air pollutants relative to other communities in the country. The data also suggests that this is affecting Brentwood disproportionately compared to nearby DC neighborhoods like Wesley Heights and Spring Valley in the Northwest, and that Brentwood's notable exposure to pollutants and facilities is largely responsible for the high asthma rates in adults. These unequal statistics can partly be attributed to socioeconomic factors and major racial disparities, specifically the high percentage of African American and Latino residents in Brentwood. Darlene brings up this very point in our interview.
Having the what I call garbage dump would not happen anywhere else in this city except in a black neighborhood.
We can't help but wonder about the district government's motivations in placing, yet again, another source of high pollution in an area already beset with pollutants. After learning about this specific impact of environmental injustice in Brentwood, I consulted with Professor Sarah Graneski at the University of Utah, an expert on the statistics of environmental equality and justice, for a more macro perspective on the issue.
I mean, at this point, decades of research has been documenting patterns of distributional environmental injustice, where you have, concentrations of people who have been historically and contemporarily socially disadvantaged, and environmental hazards, air pollution, extreme heat, a lack of access to green space. There's been so many studies that have looked at a variety of different axes of social marginality and a variety of different environmental hazards, as well as environmental amenities. And the vast majority of those studies shows patterns of inequity. So at this point, it's really well established. Of course, there are exceptions in particular places and particular hazards or particular groups, but the general trend really across the US is this pattern of injustice.